Hey man, is that an electric car? Oh, hey, yeah, it is an EV. How do you like it? Yeah, it's probably the best car I've ever owned. It's an absolute blast to drive. I was wondering how long it takes to charge this thing. You mean like from empty all the way to full? Yeah, how long does that take? Well, with DC fast charging, it'd probably take upwards of about 90 minutes or so. Yeah, that's what I thought. There's no way that would work for me. I'm gonna stick with good old gas. Hey guys, thanks for joining me. When I get into conversations with people who've never driven an EV or they don't own one, almost without fail, the first question that pops up is, how long does it take to recharge? and I think that is probably one of the most misunderstood things about EV ownership. Even though that statement is true, that it does, depending on the EV that you own, take upwards of 90 minutes to fully charge one, that's only part of the story. It really does require a change in mindset. So there are actually, just to kind of break it down for people who are non-EV owners, there are 3 levels typically for EV charging. And level 1 is the slowest method, and that is if you've just got a 120 volt, maybe a 15 amp or 20 amp circuit, and you're really only going to be charging at about maybe 1800 watts max. And in that case, it's going to take days, like literally probably 2.5, maybe 3 days to fully charge your EV at home. So that's not something that you're going to do on the road pretty much ever. And then there's level 2 charging. Now level 2 charging is for people who need to be able to charge their EV overnight, and you could fully charge it in about a 8 or 9 hour period, depending on the EV and the charger that you're using. And that usually requires a 50 amp circuit that you would install in your garage or maybe on the side of your house. Looks like a dryer plug. It's actually a NEMA 1450 receptacle, but that'll give you the ability to fully charge your EV overnight. But what if you're traveling? So traveling is where you use DC fast charging or level 3 charging. And your experience when you're level 3 charging can vary wildly, and it is very different from car to car. So some EV models like this one, this is a Volvo C40, and kind of like my wife's Mach-E, it will charge at a max rate of about 150 to 160 kilowatts. And like I said, that'll get you a full charge depending on your battery pack capacity, and somewhere between an hour to an hour and a half. And again, that's a long time. So how should we be thinking about EV charging? Well, the charge rate in your car, every EV has something called a charge curve. So that max rate is not what you're going to get throughout the entire range on your state of charge. So the lower your state of charge, the higher your charge rate is going to be. And the higher your state of charge, the lower your charge rate is going to be. So I'm going to illustrate that. We're going to actually stop and do some DC fast charging here at a fairly low state of charge, and we're going to see what kind of range we can add to this car in a 20-minute charging period. And then we'll redo the same charging session for 20 minutes, but starting from a higher state of charge, and we'll see how many miles we can add in that same 20 minutes. All right, so let's go see how that works out. All right, I have pulled up. This time I'm going to use a Tesla supercharger, and we'll use that on the other test that we're going to do when we start at a higher state of charge. So everything is all consistent. But let's see where we're starting here. So you can see down here we are at 15% state of charge, and we're showing 35 miles of range. So let me go get this thing charging, and we'll see what kind of charge rate we are currently getting. And then we'll let it run for 20 minutes and see where we end up. I've got charging initiated, and we are counting up. So we'll start the timer once we've reached whatever our cap charge rate is going to be on this particular charger. And you can see, since we're starting at 15%, which is a relatively low state of charge, and like I said, the lower the better, we should get fairly close to the maximum charge rate on this car, which is going to be somewhere around 150 kilowatts. We might do just a little bit better than that, but we'll have to see. All right, we are right at 150 kilowatts, 151. All right, it is 9:28. So we'll check back at 9:48, 20 minutes later, and we'll see how we did. All right, it has been 20 minutes, And let's take a look and see what we're doing. You can see here we have dropped to about 81 kilowatts charging, and we're currently at 63%. So let me go ahead and stop charging and see what our range ended up being. All right, so I just put it back into drive here, and it's showing 150 miles of range. So if you remember, we started out at 35 miles of range. So in 20 minutes, we added 115 miles of range. So let's compare that to charging and starting from a higher state of charge. All right, so now we're on the other end of the state of charge spectrum, and I'm currently sitting at 75% state of charge. And if I point you over here, you can take a look and see we're getting only 50 kilowatts. If we take a look in terms of what the app says, I currently have 173 miles of range. So let's charge for 20 minutes, and this will probably not get any better. In fact, it might get a little bit worse over the course of the next 20 minutes. And we'll see how many miles we get when we are at a relatively high state of charge with 20 minutes at the DC fast charger. All right, it has been 20 minutes. Let me show you what we're looking at here. And you can see, importantly, we have continued to drop. We're now at 16 kilowatts and we're at 91%. So if we take a look at the Volvo app here, let's say it's saying about 211 miles of range, and that is up from 173 miles. So we've added just, I think just under 40 miles of range in 20 minutes. And that's not a lot of range. And that is why you typically don't charge at DC fast charge stations past 80% unless you absolutely need to. Okay, so what are the key takeaways here? Well, first off, I would say that unless you're on the road for more than 200 or 300 miles a day for multiple days, or if your living situation doesn't give you access to level 1 or level 2 charging overnight, well then you're probably not even going to be using DC fast charging all that often. And on those occasions when you actually do have to use DC fast charging, like let's say you're on a long road trip, for example, you can minimize how much time you actually spend at that DC fast charging station by making sure that you don't stop to charge until you get your state of charge on your car all the way down as low as you can comfortably get it, preferably something like 10 to 15% state of charge, and then you're only going to charge it up to, say, 75 or 80%. And so the reality for most EV drivers who have the option to charge at home is that they're really not having to use DC fast charging much at all. And on those rare occasions when they do, it's typically only maybe a 10 to 25, 30 minute stop at most, and then they're on their way. And to put a bit of a finer point on that, I can say without question that in my personal experience over the past year of owning EVs, I'm now spending significantly less time waiting on my car to charge at a DC fast charging station than I would have normally had to spend stopping at gas stations to refuel. And that's because 99% of the time I'm recharging my car in the garage here at home overnight, and I just don't ever even have to worry about it. So contrary to the conclusions of my suspiciously familiar looking neighbor, there's no way that would work for me. I'm going to stick with good old gas. EV charging is actually not the huge inconvenience that many people seem to think it is. All right, hopefully you found at least something in the video helpful. If you did, do me a favor and click that like button down below. I'd very much appreciate that. And I do thank you for spending some of your valuable time in watching this video with me, and I hope you'll consider joining me for the next one. And until then, have fun out there.